it was a sharp intake of breath. I just couldn't believe that this interview had actually got past probably so many layers to actually end up being on our screens.
Andrew stayed overnight in a house where minors were sexually abused. If I had spent time with a man who was a serial sexual abuser of children, that would haunt me. And there's absolutely no sign whatsoever that Andrew is even remotely haunted by this.
Hello and welcome to this True Royalty original programme with me, Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen. On this show, we're remembering the disastrous interview Prince Andrew gave to BBC Newsnight on his links to Jeffrey Epstein, filmed 6 years ago today. And joining me in the studio to dissect this unprecedented event is former press secretary to Queen Elizabeth, Elsa Anderson, and Newsweek's chief royal correspondent, Jack Royston. I mean, this was a seismic moment in terms of royal history. And I think that, the thing that took everybody by surprise, Elsa, is the fact that it happened at all. I mean, this is so difficult to achieve, an interview like this with a member of the royal family.
Totally right. And I'm so glad that I wasn't working for the late Queen at the time. I remember watching it and just, it was a sharp intake of breath. I just couldn't believe that this interview had actually got past probably so many layers to actually end up being on our screens.
But you were still there when the original photographs of Andrew with Epstein coming out of his New York apartment. So you knew that there was something on the horizon.
I remember it very well. It was 2010 when those photographs were first published, so 15 years ago. So this story has been going for 15 years. Every weekend, a Sunday newspaper will be ringing saying, we've got new evidence to connect them, we've got more and more and more. And it was a story that just was not going away.
I mean, Jack, it's not going away, is it?
Still,
I mean, even and there's that
later.
fabulous Alistair Campbell quote about that, if a story is going on for 9 days, then you're toast. This is 15 years, as Elsa says. I mean, where is this coming from?
Well, it's coming from the fact, I would say, that it was never properly dealt with to begin with. And no disrespect to your era, I think it was not until about probably 2015, 2016, that Virginia Jeffrey's account of her actually having been made to have sex with Andrew emerged. Because back in 2011, there was a full-scale interview with her. She talked a lot about being abused by Epstein and her incredibly harrowing childhood, but Virginia did not actually say in that original round of coverage that she had been made to have sex with Andrew. But from the point when that allegation appeared in court filings in New York, in America, that was a moment when I think the royal family needed to get a grip of the situation incredibly quickly. And far from doing that, they still haven't really got a proper hold of this even now, I think.
Elsa, I mean, there's obviously, I think the big thing that everybody feels about this interview particularly is that he was obviously going a bit rogue on his own.
As a PR professional, you can lead a horse to water, but you don't necessarily make it drink. So you can give the best advice based on your judgment, but your principal might not take it because they think they know better. And clearly, I think he thought he knew better at the time to give this interview.
I mean, let's be positive, Jack. What do you think he was trying to achieve? What was the Andrew that he was hoping that people would see as a result of the interview?
Well, I think he knew, or certainly there was an interview in the offing with Panorama, a different BBC current affairs show. So he did his interview with Newsnight. Panorama was preparing a big expose on Virginia's allegations. They had an interview with her.
Well, they had a producer going round America.
Traveling America, gathering bits of all kinds of bits of evidence, which eventually actually fed into Emily Mates's interview with Andrew. But I think Andrew thought that he had identified these various bits of rebuttal evidence. I think he thought he was going to go on TV and say, oh, well, it can't be true because of the sweat, because of the fact he was at Pizza Express. They'd gone through it all and they teased out these little things which he thought were going to be compelling alibis.
So he's got, right, okay, I've got the armour on this.
Yeah.
I've got it sussed.
Yeah.
I've got it, I've got it all in my back pocket.
I think
so. He's amenable to the idea of talking publicly. But how did the BBC actually go about pulling something like this off?
Well, clearly I wasn't.
Because they must have
there.
tried the whole time with you.
Yes, they did. But we used to sort of look at various interviews. Lots of people would always try and get an interview with a member of the royal family, but it had to be a particular peg for us to even put it forward to them. So whether it be an anniversary of the Prince's Trust or a special birthday,
It had to be a wholesome
yes,
story.
absolutely, or something that's involving a charity or a patronage.
Yeah.
The late Queen famously never gave an interview throughout her entire reign. That was her stance, or her mother was exactly the same. So it would have to be a special reason to even engage with a producer or a newspaper to actually think about giving an interview.
So even the first stage is quite, there's a lot of gatekeepers you've got to keep happy.
Yeah.
But then even if there's a sort of a general sense of positivity towards giving an interview, there are then hurdles that you could set
Absolutely.
to make sure that it would go well.
Yes. And you would ask, what do you want to talk about? Where are the subject areas? What are the lines of questioning? Clearly,
meanwhile,
with this
very craftily going, oh yes, I can. I can hear the subtext there.
Absolutely. Also, who's asking it? Newsnight is a very, very important, proper, grown-up program, and that they would actually do the digging properly, and they would ask the right questions, and it would be insightful. And I just think the lack of preparation by the household towards giving this interview was just quite extraordinary.
I mean, you can tell from watching it, it's a broad-ranging interview about a subject that I never imagined in a million years Andrew would actually give an interview about. To give a comparison point, you wind the clock back to the 1990s. There were stories around about Charles having had an affair with Camilla based on a book that Princess Diana secretly cooperated with. Charles did an interview on TV with Jonathan Dimbleby, the journalist, and so the whole interview was basically fairly positive and about how his wonderful charity work and all of these things. And there's just one little question thrown in there. What about this? At the point,
everyone's gone to put the kettle on. You hope, but actually.
And then and all Charles said was that he was faithful to his wife up until everything had broken down and was irreparable. And that was it. And that was a bombshell back in 1994. To have a royal family member sit down and do an hour on the biggest scandal they have ever faced is unheard of, and I think will quite probably never happen again. I think this is a completely unique one-off moment in royal history.
The royal family seemed to be so behind it. I mean, it was in Buckingham Palace. It's not even as if this is something that's on neutral territory. It feels as if it is official, doesn't it? By doing that.
It does, but I don't know how much, certainly the Queen knew about it. She might not have known the full extent of the interview. I don't know how far the press office was involved in it. I know there was a press officer who resigned before.
Oh, who resigned? Yes, yeah.
Who was actually driving this? Who was actually organising this?
Well, in my view, it must have been Amanda Thirsk, the chief of staff, who was driving this. I know she had the initial meetings with the Newsnight team, with Sam McAllister, with Emily Maitlis.
This is someone you had been working with.
I have, yes, absolutely, very much so, very much so. Amanda, in my view, could never see the Duke's faults. She was very much, she had his back with everything. She was, she was his number one cheerleader, his number one fan. And I think,
do you think that's the problem here?
Potentially, that could have clouded her judgment. Yes, and she wanted to see, she wanted him to have the space to actually give his side of the story. But I don't think she saw what the negativity and potential, disaster this could be.
So she really basically didn't see it in a kind of a real context. That she saw her principal, who was so glamorous and so dashing, and the way that the interview was set up. I mean, he looked good. He was in this. He was in his own space, wasn't he? His own context. The art direction of the interview, I thought, was fascinating.
And even
it was powerful.
Introducing sort of Emily around the palace, showing her the staterooms, walking down the corridor, engaging her in conversation.
Yeah, there's an important PR lesson there, which is you need to have tough friends. You have to have people working for you who are willing to tell the truth, but that also speaks to the environment that you create, the people you hire, and your own willingness and threshold for being told difficult truths, which, we know that Andrew doesn't have a particularly high threshold for that.
It's very hard being the sort of the negative one, the person that's standing up to your principle. It's
very
easy to be a yes person, but then you wouldn't be doing your job properly.
Who else was in the background? Because, I mean, one of the things, there's this feeling that possibly one of his daughters might have been involved in the original setup. I mean, it's certainly part of the marvelous dramatization that they made. But do we know whether, because that's quite interesting that he's feeling that maybe he might need someone from a younger generation to see that perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, Emily Maitlis and Sam McAllister were in the room with Andrew and Beatrice. They met them, and they were in the room with them, and there's no reason to doubt that they articulated that accurately. They said nothing particularly, smearing of her, beyond the fact that she had, she was there to give Andrew a young person's take on it. I think the impression is that she was a bit more across social media than Andrew, and a bit more aware of what the public actually thought about him. because, it's very easy for somebody in Andrew's position to kind of live in a bubble, not understand what ordinary people think of the situation.
Do you think that that's possibly something that she maybe drove? Because by the sound of it, he at that stage was very secure of who he was and he was making the right decision. Maybe it's something that Beatrice said over Sunday lunch, Dad, why don't I come and check this out a bit?
I think it's something that Beatrice drove a entirely well-conceived attempt to impress on Andrew that this was not a trivial matter and wasn't going to go away. And I don't think that was the wrong thing to do. I think the interview was obviously had a catastrophic effect for him. But somebody sitting him down and trying to say, look, this isn't just a flash in the pan, storm in a teacup, and it's not going away. Like, that's not a bad thing to try and impress on someone, in this case, her father. So, they might have come away with a PR disaster, but the instinct to say, like, you've got to stop just dismissing this was not a bad instinct.
But I think the thing that I got from the interview, and I still can't shake off, is the fact that he's quite dismissive all the way through it.
I think for me, the hardest part was when, right at the end, Emily Maitlis said to him, is there anything you'd like to add? And that was a perfect opportunity for him to say, I sympathise with anyone who's been sex trafficked, who has been a victim of sexual exploitation. As a woman, I feel that really, really strongly. And he didn't do it. He didn't do that throughout. And that is clearly, he does not have any empathy with people who have been trafficked.
Andrew stayed overnight in a house where minors were sexually abused. Like, wouldn't that haunt you? Like, that would haunt me. If I had spent time with a man who was a serial sexual abuser of children, that would haunt me. And there's absolutely no sign whatsoever that Andrew is even remotely haunted by this.
I mean, he didn't even call Jeffrey Epstein a paedophile, a convicted paedophile in that interview.
Said what he was behaving in a way that was unbecoming. Yes. And Emily Maitlis had to snap back at him, unbecoming.
I know, extraordinary.
It's like, it actually defies belief. And so one of these emails that's come out, it emerged that in February 2011, so this is a couple of months after Andrew stayed overnight in New York with Jeffrey Epstein, he told Emily Maitlis that he did that because he wanted to break off his friendship with Epstein, and he was too honourable, and he wanted to do the honourable thing by doing it in person instead of over the phone. So
over 3 nights.
Over 3 nights.
It's a long conversation.
Flew out to New York, but also specifically did it just at the moment when they were walking through Central Park being tapped. And then a couple of months later, he emailed Epstein to, the day after Virginia's first newspaper interview was published, to say, I'm more worried about how this is affecting you. Don't worry about me. We're in it together. We'll just have to rise above it, and we'll play again soon. And one really important
Can we just, sorry, my blood just ran cold there. In the context of what you've just said, and in the context of what was going on in that house, it is chilling.
It's absolutely chilling. And the particular interview that Virginia had given the day before, she talked about how she lived homeless from the age of 11 and had to have sex with men for food, not even for money, for food. She took Xanax to numb the pain while she was being abused over many years by Epstein. And they told it in long form, 3,500 words on the front page of the Mail on Sunday. And Andrew responded with that email to Jeffrey Epstein saying, I'm more worried about how this is affecting you. We now know that there's documentary evidence that Andrew paid $200 for what was described as a massage and yoga. Andrew, is he into yoga?
I've not seen him on a yoga mat.
But how does he explain this? Like, this is a guy who stayed multiple times in Florida. He traveled to the island. His explanation to Emily Maitlis was, really, it was about the dinners. It was about the dinners.
And the contacts.
And the contacts.
And the doors opening.
Yeah. The doors opening to the sciences. Yeah. But that's not what you get on the island. That's not what you get in Florida. That's what you might get at a random dinner one night at Epstein's house. But he has not said anything to explain what he did with Epstein when it was just the two of them. Were you offered a massage? Did anything weird happen during that massage? He said that he had absolutely no idea of what Epstein was up to, but is that really plausible given the amount of time they spent together?
I mean, Elsa, one of the things that I think we all find so tricky to comprehend is the fact that after this car crash, this is a car crashing into a train, crashing into a tanker full of fuel, he thought it went rather well.
But I wonder, was he having advisors? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Would Amanda have said, well, sir, that went really well?
Yeah.
I wonder if it had been a male interviewer, whether the tone and setting and the response would have been different.
So his rebuttal was that it couldn't have been him dancing with Virginia Giuffre in Tramp, I think it was, because she describes the moment as the man being very, very sweaty, and he's not sweated since the Falklands, which again is extraordinary because you can see in his head he's going, let's bring the Falklands back out.
The cogs are turning.
Yeah, the cogs are
People
turning,
like
aren't they?
this.
Yeah, it was sort of like, you remember me with a rose between my teeth, everyone was cheering. I'm still that Andy, It is absolutely fascinating that he thinks he can play that, not understanding that actually he's dealing with a world that is so much more sophisticated, that can see that right the way through.
Audiences are really intelligent nowadays,
Yeah.
and they react instantly on social media, and everybody can see which reactions are trumping others because of the engagement. You can just go on Twitter and you can see, well, okay, this person's defending that person has got 6 million 6 million views on their tweet, so obviously that is the better response.
But also it's feeding itself. So you're listening to what other people are saying, you're taking bits of their argument, you're applying them to your argument, you're making the whole thing bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger.
But all that said, they should have seen it coming because some of his alibis were absurd.
Let's talk alibis.
Yeah.
I mean, they are literally, eye-rollingly just so ordinary. But I think you made the point that there's almost too much detail.
Yes. Don't dig a bigger hole than the
No.
one you're already in.
No. So apparently he was it Pizza Express? And he gives the exact branch. And, because again, it's sort of like, okay, but that's so easy to check with his daughters. And, there's a whole, I don't think he quite shared what topping he had on his pizza, but you felt he was holding himself back at that point.
I mean, it's so utterly ridiculous. If it wasn't so abhorrent, it would be a laughing matter.
Well, it's absolutely true. And I think, look, the thing is he said it doesn't add up because, and this is the key thing, as much as we all laugh about the fact that it's about Pizza Express, he went there in the afternoon and he was supposed to be at Tramp in the evening. It just doesn't explain anything. Of course, it was a teen, his daughters were 11 and 12 at the time.
So there was
13.
tea. He's in
meanwhile he's in
Tramp at 2 o'clock
in the
morning.
evening. Yes, exactly. And
absolutely.
he said, I couldn't have bought her he's supposed to have gone to, her story was he went to the bar to buy me a cocktail. He said, well, I'm teetotal. But which is true. But he was buying the drink for her. And he was like, well, I couldn't have done because I don't know where the bar is in Tramps.
That's probably true anyway.
Yeah, but why is that rebuttal? What is it? It's 18 years later. Okay, you can't remember where the bar is. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything.
It just comes back to why did he not check all this with a grown-up?
Yeah.
Actually, if you'd sat down, anyone, even Beatrice.
But he must
gone
have
through
done.
Do you reckon?
It smacks of what you're saying about too much detail. Absolutely smacks of him having gone and found out what is available. The specific, knowing exactly where he was on that specific day could only have been a case of going back.
I don't know what I did yesterday. Let's say 18 years ago.
Totally. Somebody must have checked the diary and tried to do this big kind of, cast the net out and see what factual evidence came back. So it must have been done by a process of working with a team who were trying to look at what there was available and what might rebut her account. And so, I 100% think they'd done this and thought, well, this is our opportunity to get ahead of it and give our rebuttal evidence that we found.
And also to prove that he's a warm, engaging, considerate human being. And of course, it was entirely the opposite.
Because he's not. No, this is it. Because he's not. So he showed himself to be who he
You're
really is.
off his Christmas card list.
Well, I probably am. It's not the first time I've been off his Christmas card list. But this is the thing about it. He is a very arrogant man, and so many people have said it. But there was also an instant where, after the Lockerbie bombing, he was dispatched up to Lockerbie to try to show that, try to show people, provide comfort, reassurance, show people that the nation cares. And he went into this big thing about how, well, statistically, this is bound to happen at some point. And it reflects this inability that he has to connect with other people's emotions. Any person could see that you go up there, you're supposed to speak warmly to people, you hear them, listen to them, their accounts.
Offer comfort.
Offer comfort. That's all you have to do. No one's there for a conversation about the data.
Well, people are looking to be heard at that point. And he's absolutely that he does not listen by the sound of it.
The most damning part of the entire interview was when he was asked by Emily Maitlis, do you regret your friendship with Jeffrey Epstein? And he said, even now, still no, because he remembers these dinners where he met all these incredible people. And the thing about that is that actually, underneath it all, is an affirmation of the entire power network that Epstein built. This was how he got away with his abuse for so long.
Elsa, what was the impact on the late Queen? Do we know? She'd obviously been pro her alleged favourite son.
Absolutely. And it is a huge, huge distraction from the fantastic work that the royal family does. Because everything that they want to do, everything they want to focus on, whether it's charities, patronages, the good works, is not getting an airing. And she was at the twilight of her years. No one wants this noise going on when you're that age. I mean, it's horrendous. I'm sure it had an effect on her health. I really do.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad. I mean, in fact, and it's also very sad in the context of that you then a couple of years later, you've got the wheel coming off Harry as well. So these are two people that she was very, very fond of, who are literally undermining this extraordinary work that she'd done throughout her reign, which was all about all of these incredibly positive things that we really celebrate. Well, I mean, where can he go? What can he do? Is there an off ramp?
I think that what has been missing from the monarchy's response to this actually is what you would get in modern, in the modern corporate culture of either a private company or a public institution, is that you state your values and then you acknowledge if somebody's failed to live up to them. So, the monarchy is anti-sexual abuse, anti-trafficking, from all the fantastic work that Queen Camilla's done, highlighting the impact of rape, sexual abuse and domestic violence, but also Eugenie has a slavery organization which is about trafficking. And yet none of that is as famous as Andrew and Epstein. What do you do if a royal family member, if a principal is not behaving themselves? You can't fire them. You can't haul them for a disciplinary tribunal or, dock their salary. They're not staff. What do you do? And so it speaks to a deep-seated flaw in the system of monarchy, which arises out of the fact that this is a historic institution, which is part of what we love about it. We love the monarchy precisely
but there has to be evolution.
There has to be evolution.
Continuing evolution.
And so the way public institutions and private companies deal with these things now, we used to live in a personality-driven world where it was the Alan Sugar who would come in and sort people out, but we don't live in that world anymore.
Dare I say Donald Trump?
Do dare say Donald Trump. We don't live in that world anymore. We now live in a world where institutions are governed by systems and rules. They're policy-driven institutions now, and that's supposed to prevent problems from ever arising to begin with, because people know that the minute they breach values, we will draw a hard line and there will be repercussions and accountability, irrespective of anything you might want to say about, oh, well, I didn't mean it. It was just a joke. You're supposed to come down hard.
There's no mitigation on this. Bleak, Ailsa. It's a very bleak picture for Prince Andrew. Do you feel that they're can he lie low? Can we put him on a remote Scottish island and leave him there for 10 years and then maybe come back?
I would feel sorry for that remote Scottish islander.
Oh, okay, right.
Who knows? But you go back in the 60s and John Perfumo, he was at rock bottom, and yet slowly he built up his reputation by sort of being below the surface and doing a lot of charity work, and it only emerged sort of years and years later.
But surely the problem here is that, does Andrew actually think he ever did anything wrong anyway? I mean, there is nothing that's coming from anything he's saying, anything he's doing. There's this terrible feeling that with this whole rebuttal, he's not doing it to apologize. He's kind of doing it to win. He's actually trying to get that situation so that it stops the difficult moment he's having, so he can go back to the way it was before. That's all he was trying to do, go back to the way it was before.
I think that ship literally has sailed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's the same with the statement on the titles. This was the problem with the statement on the titles, saying, I just want to stop this being a distraction to the monarchy, but I've always done my duty, is saying, look, this is all still really unfair. Can you just make it go away? I'm giving you something more now. So this means it goes away now, right? And that is not where the public are. That is not how the public see this. The public look at Andrew and they see a man who, when Virginia's lawyers were trying to serve him papers in a civil lawsuit she brought against him alleging rape, he hid out at Balmoral where they couldn't get to him. They had to serve him papers in person because it's a fairly old school system in America. This is where the monarchy right now needs a tough friend who can say that if you don't do this, however hard you might find it, then you could still be dealing with this in 20 years' time. And my concern is, so here's a statistic for you. If you were 14 when those pictures were taken in Central Park, you're 29 now. You're having a generation of parents now who have only ever known this scandal. The entire formative years of their lives have been dominated by Prince Andrew and Epstein. So that creates a potential tipping point for the monarchy, where there's actually very recently, I think back in September, the British Social Attitude Survey came out. And if you dig really deep into the data and you look at the age ranges, actually now, 35 to 44-year-olds, so they're the parents who already have kids, whose kids are maybe kind of in primary school, they are as likely to be willing to abolish the monarchy as they are to want to keep the king. So already you have a generation of parents, that was unthinkable in the 80s, completely unthinkable. And even in the 90s, it was never like that during the Diana era, even during the
So you think that the monarchy could actually be brought down by one man?
I think in 20 years, 18 years, 15 years, 20 years time, you will suddenly have a situation where this generation of children will be of voting age, and suddenly attitudes to the monarchy will be much
if there was
more
a vote,
hostile. And all it will take, and I feel so sorry for George, Charlotte, and Louis, who have done absolutely nothing wrong, but one of them will have a scandal because they're human beings, and human beings are not perfect. And instead, it's like how fertile is the soil in which your crops grow, right? And they will suddenly find that they're dealing with this incredibly hostile, confrontational public who are not willing to forgive whatever, minor or major indiscretion there might be. And so that, I think, is a huge concern for William, and it's probably no small part of the reason why he is so much more determined than others to, grasp the nettle here, because I think he will know.
And he is allegedly very anti-Andrew, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very anti-Andrew.
You saw
driving a
body
lot of
language
this
after the Duchess of Kent's funeral.
Yeah, Stone Cold blanked him.
Absolutely, and Andrew was trying to engage.
Well, there was a
Prince
hand over
Wales.
the lips, so the lip readers couldn't actually see what he was saying to Andrew, which was, that shows how savvy he now is
Seasoned
about the way it
professional.
was.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
to me, that's our hope. The hope is that actually that all that's gone wrong is also motivating a strong and very just and very good fight back from, other very senior members of the royal family. You're absolutely right that, this could have been dealt with in a much, much better way, and should possibly have been dealt with in a real kind of, let's get rid of this tumor. But it is forcing everyone else to really up their game and doing it in a much more sophisticated way.
It's just unfathomable, but this is what happens if you allow a scandal like this to rage for 15 years and don't get a grip of it. And it is like, I genuinely think, and I've been watching the numbers in the polling since 2021 in detail. We do a lot of stories about polling at Newsweek. We've done some of our own polls. And I do think that we are potentially at a tipping point where some of this damage might become irreversible, just because it's so deeply entrenched.
And when he was forced to give up his titles in October, Prince Andrew said, "As I have said previously, I vigorously deny the accusations against me." You need to get back employed by the royal household, because you've got a lot of work to do, Ailsa Anderson, just to turn this around. You're the only woman that can actually sort out the monarchy for us. That's all we've got time for on this show. Thank you so much to my fabulous guests, Ailsa Anderson and Jack Royston, and of course to you for tuning in. Do keep the conversation going on our socials. Just search True Royalty TV. See you next time.